Greetings, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the Libra Solar Festival webinar of the 2025 initiative. My name is Alexander, and I welcome you on behalf of the 2025 Initiative Coordination Group. Today is the second day of the 5 days period of the full moon. And as Sun moves through Libra, we link with energies of this distant life, which we know as sign of Libra, constellation of Libra, which was suggested to consider as a hub of the wheel for the entire zodiacal wheel. And so in this special energy, we come together as a group. So today, our guests, Duane Carpenter and Rose Bates, and they will help us to focus on this Libran energy, sharing and leading our group thoughts on the Rainbow Bridge. And before we start, let's take a minute of silence, coming together as one group, linking across space, heart to heart, mind to mind, connecting in a group heart center, recognizing ourselves as part of the World Servers Group. Thank you. And so we start our work today, working as one group, and I invite Duane and Rose unmute themselves and share their screen, taking us on this journey. And we suggest to keep our video cameras off during the course of our work today, not to distract us. Thank you. Duane, Rose, are you there?
Thank you, Sasha. It's a real joy to be here today, and I would like to thank the 2025 initiative team for their invitation, with special thanks from my partner, Rose Bates, who has made this presentation possible. We have several objectives that we would like to obtain in this presentation. And I have them briefly listed. The first one, an attempt to present the ageless wisdom teachings in a form that is compatible with a newer type of modern discipleship training. To create a presentation of the ageless wisdom teachings that show visually and through audio-visual aids the idea of energy and force in what may be happening behind the outer appearances of the phenomenal world. This presentation is done in an attempt to awaken the intuition and not just impart occult details or facts. A good foundation mentally, however, is a good base from which to depart into more intuitive realms. The main theme is going to be building the rainbow bridge between heaven and earth. And to do that effectively, we're going to take very briefly, I'm going to repeat. My internet connection has just informed me that it's unstable. So I'm going to repeat what I just said. The main idea of this presentation is the idea of building the rainbow bridge between heaven and earth. And to do that, we're going to have a few subsidiary questions and comments. One, we're going to define what the rainbow bridge is. Two, how it can be contacted or built. Bridge building on a personality level, and then taking it more into the macrocosm, bridge building to the ashram and to the planetary logos, Sunat Kumara. Libra has a powerful third ray influence, and it is one of the key constellations pouring in redemptive light and knowledge and wisdom to humanity at this time. And in honoring that, we're going to give some important insights. Let us start by reviewing the 6 stages of building the Rainbow Bridge or Antakarana. Now there's an upper 6 stages of building and a lower, and we're primarily going to be focusing on the lower bridge between the personality and the soul. But the principles, the techniques, the laws are the same. This bridge is the connecting cable that links the lower and higher planes, the microcosm with the macrocosm. The Rainbow Bridge is built by a definite act of conscious effort. TK outlines these 6 stages of building as 1. Intention, 2. Visualization, 3. Projection, 4. Invocation, evocation, 5. Stabilization, and 6. Resurrection and ascension. You'll note that the 3 first stages of building the Antakarana bridge that I've listed here, 1, 2, and 3, actually have sort of a color code. Intention, next to the 1, is the 3rd aspect of divinity, hence the active intelligent color. The second one, visualization, is the use of the emotional energy built to the Buddhic or to the heart. So it is colored the 2nd ray blue. And then projection, which is really the first ray, we have colored the first ray of the will, which is red. It is often asked, what is the new Agni Yoga? And in these first three stages of building the Antakarana, we can find some important information. The Agni Yoga of the future combines the right use of the mind, a new use of the picture-making faculty or visualization, but perhaps most important of all, projection, which is the ability to drive these bridges of light into higher realms and into more subjective areas. So those are the three primary stages. Now, once you have done these correctly, you reach the invocative evocation stage, number 4, and that is you have put out a invocative demand with a thread or threads of light, and then you wait attentively for the return of the evocation. If it's the soul, if it's the master, if it's the ashram, if it's the Lord of the world, there has to be a reciprocal return from the invocation to make that bridge complete. When the disciple has done that sufficiently over a long period of time, the whole process stabilizes. Not just one full moon meeting where you're getting an impact of energy, it's you're able to connect and keep that connection stably and on a regular basis. And then this, of course, leads to the final and perhaps the most important, subjectively speaking, number 6, resurrection and ascension. And that is when the student, the disciple, the initiate transcends out of the lower limitations of the personality and even the intermediary, the soul itself, and contacts the one monadic life. So let us show graphically this process. And once again, and I apologize for being redundant, but we're going to treat some of these important insights and laws and principles somewhat superficially, because most of the people who are participating in this presentation are already familiar with the 6 stages of building and have been using it for quite some time. But it's important for several reasons. Perhaps the most important, I want to give the participants an opportunity to see how powerful images and symbols can be used, and that when you get a fixed idea, intention, which is what do you plan to do? If you can see a chart and a map that says this is what you have to do, then you can set in motion the visualization process. Then you can set in motion the projecting lines. And what you see here is the 3 threads. In the center, from the atmic to the physical etheric, that's the life thread. It's the will aspect I just recently mentioned in relationship to Agni Yoga. To the left, the bridge between Buddhi and astral, that's the consciousness thread, and that's the love, the astral Buddhic love ascent. And then to the right, you have the creative thread, which is the lower mind to the higher mind. So what you see is the lower triad of the personality triangle pointing down, the soul in the middle, and then you see the triad of the one monadic life. And at the third initiation, you begin to bridge between the integrated personality fused with the soul and making alignment with the monad. Are there any comments up to this point? Rose would like to make one.
Yes, it's as I see that in this wonderful image, I see almost like a summary of the 6 stages of the building process. Because if you, as Duane already iterated, you have the intention right in front of you before it's completed, and then you have the visualization, and you have it's sort of like a linear 2D expression of projection. If you can see the lower triangle, when it fuses with the upper triangle along those 3 lines of those 3 threads, you can see, the 2D part of projection, even though we're taking concepts and words and putting them into images. So it's never going to accurately portray the process, but it is just another way for the mind to see it a little bit differently. And then in that, when the higher triangle with the 4th stage of invocation, evocation, using those same threads of the initial projection of the soul infused personality, you have that evocation coming back down. And that, of course, then would be superimposed, and you would have more like a 6-pointed star versus the 2 separate triangles. And then in there, if we had another image with a 6-pointed star, it would be your stabilization of that. And then the resurrection and ascension is when that central point and then becomes radiatory, and you just have this blazing forth of dynamic light that is in an animation a little later on in the presentation. But this is I think a really good image for seeing this process very linearly, flat, and in 2 dimension. So that's all I wanted to say. So continue.
Excellent, Rose. These are very important additions and qualifications. Some of the practical questions that each person can ask themselves that can help speed this process up of the building of the Antakarana and making it more of a science are, what initiation are you undergoing? What centers are activated or triangles being built within your etheric body? What is your 6-fold ray chart in astrological influences? What master's ashram you may actually be in? This image is useful because it indicates the 7 ray types. And at the very top, you see that the personality ray has 3 lesser rays: the lower mind, the emotional or astral body, and the physical etheric. You have to build your Antakarana bridge between those 3 so that the personality is fully integrated and prepared to make its ascent towards the soul ray. Very important stage. Personality integration. When the personality ray is known and its note and color, that can further assist in this building process. When you get to the place of projection, you would be projecting first your personality ray with its unique coloring to the soul level, and then eventually the personality ray with its coloring and the soul ray with its coloring, what we'd call a dual ray, is then driven through the power of the will, to go back to the projection stage, all science, a new Aquarian series of sciences that we need to understand to get to these higher levels with the least expenditure of energy. And then, of course, you go from the soul ray to the monadic ray. And this is visually an idea of the building process between those three different entities, which are really one when you see it in its highest subjective state. Now, this next image refers to some of the questions we just asked in the previous slide. The idea that there are 5 basic triangles that you have to create to undergo the 1st through the 5th initiation. And I understand looking at this chart may seem a trite technical, but what you have to do is you have to see this chart as a roadmap to the infinite. Let me give an example, and I'm going to try to use my mouse here to assist in this. Watch my cursor. Okay, I have to change monitors and I can't do it. Oh, Roses to the rescue. Thank you. The first triangle, just as an example, because we don't have time to go through all the different initiations and the triangles that are associated with them, but the first initiation is consummated when energy from the base of the spine is drawn up to the sacral center, and then from the sacral center to the throat. And then once again, it descends to the base of the spine, to the sacral center, to the throat. And this is all a part of the first initiation. Remember now, every higher chakra is attempting to redeem the substance on the next lower level. And why is the throat so important in the first initiation? Because it absorbs sexual energy, and actually sexual energy transmutated is one of the key ideas behind the activation of the throat center. So if anyone tries to cut themselves off from the sacral center, they do it at their own peril. Yet having said that, when a person has undergone the first initiation, a lot of sexual energy is transmutated. And we won't go through the other initiations, but it's very important that you understand as energy circulates around this triangle, it goes faster and faster. And it will actually, through rotary motion, remember now, these 3 centers are on different levels. So in other words, a triangle connects 3 different levels of energy or force. And when this triangle is fully activated, it becomes a vortex. This is one of the single most difficult things to understand about the occult teachings, is where is the crossover point between the lower mind and its important use as a defining and organizing organ and the actual experience of the energy itself. So what you are actually looking at through these 5 triangles are 5 vortices. Now, we're going to move in to the next slide, and it is an animation. And this animation is very important that we have had a preparatory outline. If I showed you this wonderful animation we're going to see, one might have a tendency to say, oh, that's beautiful, nice artwork, but where is the esoterics behind it? And the esoterics behind this video we're going to see next is in the curious phrase that the Tibetan uses when he speaks about the intuition. And he says that energy wells up or unfolds out of itself. Now, that is a tough statement to wrap the lower mind around. So, again, and I apologize for being redundant, the next animation is going to give the observer this idea of growth and emergence of the triangles in a whole different way. They're going to be seen in their organic state and how they overlap, interpenetrate, and blend. The triangles in this image are also surrounded by circular waves of energy. And we have to remember that a triangle is a vortex in its early stage of development. And this is where the technical side of the occult path moves into more of the intuitive. The Tibetan has stated that the egoic lotus, which you see demonstrated here, is a vortex, and that this vortex rotates at high speed through rotary motion. It palpitates, it blazes forth, and it's a very organic emergence that, for teaching purposes, we have brought down and solidified. Michael Robbins in the Moya School and his affiliates have done wonderful work with analyzing each petal and how each one unfolds and what are the qualities and the characteristics. And it would well be worth the serious student to research that, because it's all there on his wonderful Makara site. We talked about the 6 stages of building the Antakarana and how when you get to evocation and evocation, that this is where the real work begins. This is where the first and second initiations are really situated, and preparation for the third initiation is now open. Because once you have built that bridge between the integrated personality and the soul, force now pours through unimpeded. Like attracts like. And this is why purification is so important, because it can overstimulate you if you haven't done certain preparatory work. Now, the next slide talks about the Sutratma, which is a part of the Antakarana bridge. It's not well known, and I'm going to have Rose, if she would be so kind, to read this to us, because it talks about a very important aspect and begins to demonstrate the importance of the vortex.
The Sutratma and the Antakarana. This is a quote from Cosmic Fire, page 232. and the second part is from page 316.
Rose, sorry, can you please move a little bit closer to the microphone?
Okay, is this better?
Yes, thank you.
Electric fire and fire by friction are fused, and the consequent solar fire blazes forth in radiant glory. In man, this polarity is achieved. The three different types of electrical phenomena are demonstrated, and the light blazes forth, irradiating the causal body and lighting up the entire sutratma or thread, literally the path which connects the causal vehicle with the physical brain. Then disintegration or destruction ensues. The causal body vanishes in a blaze of electric fire, and the real man or self is abstracted from the three world bodies.
Excellent. Excellent.
I would ask you, Duane, the electric fire and fire by friction, could you briefly relate that to, is the fire by friction the personality fires in vehicles, and the electric fire the monadic and causal body vehicles?
Yes, that's a good analysis. And the soul stands as the intermediary. I find these quotes by the Tibetan not only expansive because they're a part of a new science, but they're equally as poetic as well. And when you bring art and poetry and science together, you can get a new flowering and many new insights into things that are hidden. The causal body will palpitate in time with an inner irradiation, causing that point of light to become a flame by steadily fanning the spark and feeding the fire, causing the causal body to grow and expand from being a colorless ovid holding the ego like a yolk within the eggshell to a thing of rare beauty, containing within itself all the colors of the rainbow. This is an occult fact. The causal body will palpitate in due course of time with an inner irradiation and an inner glowing flame that will gradually work its way from the center to the periphery. It will then pierce through that periphery using the body, that product of millennia of lives of pain and endeavor, as fuel for its flames. It will burn all up. It will mount upward to the triad and become one with that triad. Will be reabsorbed into the spiritual consciousness. Will carry with it, using heat as the symbol, an intensity of heat or quality of color or vibration that before were lacking. So these are preparatory statements by the Tibetan on the quality and condition of the solar angel, the divine ego, on its own plane. And the next image, in some small and perhaps insignificant way, will give some idea of that concept.
Tatsaviturvareniam Bargo devasya dhimahi Yo yona prachodayat Om Bhurvasvaha Tatsaviturvareniam ritrovare iniam pargo devasya mai riyuyona.
I would like to just comment on that image in that it was such a powerful quote earlier. And even though that animation is somewhat, is the inability to really show that on the inner planes of what really happens when you have this in soul infusion, and now you're getting this intensity and this electric fire from the monad, and then it starts to palpitate, it starts to scintillate, and then in that, and then you have these greater stages of where it just goes radiatory, and the causal body is no longer containing that container is just gone radiatory. So it's just a little way to just conceptualize that with some nice images, but again, it could I guess I'd add some of this fourth ray into, instead of just seeing things, in two-dimensional, to just get a small little taste of what some of this might be on the inner planes.
Excellent, Rose. Thank you. Excellent, Rose. Thank you. For those of you who have studied the Rorich's Agni Yoga series, they will find this image that's coming and the quote along with it as very evocative. And I'm convinced that even though the teachings from Master Moya along the Agni Yoga line are very first ray, I find they're also very intuitive. They can really awaken the heart and the intuition. And Rose, would you like to read this quote by the Tibetan?
Before a man can tread the path, he must become that path himself. Out of the substance of his own life, he must construct this rainbow bridge, this lighted way. He spins it and anchors it as a spider spins a thread along which it can travel. Each of his three divine aspects contributes to that bridge.
Excellent. And this, as participants know, was the opening image to this presentation. To see the Antakarana in a different light, to see it as energy in force, in motion. This picture of the Rainbow Bridge impacting the earth is a nice place to start, but let us explore a little further and with a more accurate depiction of the Rainbow Bridge vortices and spheres descending and surrounding the planet. This is a good place to start. Energy from a higher dimension descends and it enters our planet, it enters our auric field from what we might call the northernmost point. And it pours in, circulates around like the halves of an apple, this spherical charge of energy from higher levels. It passes through the organism, in this case it's the earth, and then it passes out. And what we're going to see in the next image is this dynamic in motion. The idea that you're seeing a symbol of the Rainbow Bridge, the Antakarana, in motion. And when you watch this, keep in mind that you're at the first offset of this animation, you're seeing only one sphere. But as it comes to a climax and an end, you'll see multiple spheres. And this is really, really an important teaching tool because it shows how energy enters and how it exits, how it circulates. And when you see the latter part of this vortex rotating with multiple layers, you'll begin to understand how the bodies, the centers, the rays, and the planes are all constructed. They're constructed in spherical forms, and what connects them is that the energy pours in the northern point, circulates throughout the organism, but then it exits through the southern point, but that southern point becomes the northern point of the next sphere. This is the true Jacob's ladder. This is the true ascension without any break in the consciousness of these higher entities. Okay. Use it as a meditation, and if you feel any discomfort looking at this image, close your eyes and just go with the music.
Tatsaviturvarenyam Bargo devasya dhimahi Dhiyo yona prachodayat Om Bhurvuvasvaha Tatsaviturvarenyam Bargo devasya dhimahi Dhiyo yona prachodayat Om Bhurvuvasvaha Tatsavitur Tatsaviturvarenyam Bargo devasya dhimahi Dhiyo yona prachodayat Om Bhurvuvasvaha Tatsaviturvarenyam Bargo devasya dhimahi Dhiyo yona prachodayat.
Well, when I look at that, I see we've moved into the stage of relating the Antakarana on a planetary level and with its higher aspects. And in the first stage of that, I'm seeing like the development of the lower triangle and its circulation of energies. And then it changes into these different colors with a little more quality added. And I see that as like a higher stage of this invocation and evocation occurring all the time, but just on a little higher level where it's bringing in more energies. If you have any comment, Duane, about how some of that might relate to the planetary Antakarana in the different where some of those energies would be that are coming down into the planetary system.
Well, it's the 5 major planetary centers. In other words, the main ones are the northern and southern entrance and exit. But these 5 planetary centers that we've been working with for many, many years are actually vortices, and the triangles activate these vortices. And that really leads us to the next quote by the Tibetan, if you could read, Rose, that talks about the vortex and talks about the need of the disciple to stand in the vortex.
The ashram as a spiritual vortex. It's from a meditation number 4, spiritual livingness. In assigning this meditation, I made a remark of major importance. I said that this meditation was the first one given by me, which carries the disciple into the true world of esotericism. It concerns his relation to that vortex of special energies, which we call an ashram. It is therefore intended to teach the disciple how to absorb energy and what to contribute of energy to the whole.
Excellent. All of the chakra system we know are vortices, little whirls of energy and force that are either ascending or descending, and that they create vehicles. They create fields of energy and force that we call the auric field. Now, in this image here, you can see the 7 sacred planetary logoi and the solar logos in the center, and they're done up as vortices. And what's interesting about this image is that it not only shows the 7 ashramic groups presided over by the masters, but it shows the 7 subgroups. If you look at the very top carefully, it's not easy to discern, but you'll see, like in the 7th, in the 7-ray group of, say, the master rocket C, you have 7 subgroups. So it's not as simple as, oh, I'm in a 2nd ray ashram, love wisdom. Well, are you in a 2-1, which would be it's a main energy 2nd ray, but with a strong 1st ray expression? Or is it 2-3? Strong love energy, but with that wisdom, with the knowledge aspect, and going around consecutively on the wheel till you cover all of them. Okay, we're going to skip a few slides here because we're going to stay on track, and Rose is got me in a good place. Okay, we're coming up for our ending here, and I wanted to share a little more about Sanat Kumara, our planetary god, our divine Gaia, our heavenly mother. Under the heading of the purpose of Sanat Kumara, DK states, people are apt to forget that with each forward advance of humanity, the demands upon the hierarchy change. New needs must be met, new techniques used, new and experimental methods must be employed. As I write for disciples and initiates, I call this to your attention. If any of the participants feel a sense of expansion, heat within a center, or other flashes of the intuition, I would like to claim responsibility for that as a great artist, but that is not the case. You are being presented here with soul and hierarchical symbols, and they carry weight and they're very potent. And this is why I ask people, if they feel any discomfort, to just simply close their eyes and go with the music.
And before we get to that final animation, another quote about the ashram Sanat Kumara is the hierarchy as a meeting place. The hierarchy as a meeting place of energies is emphasized, and in the disciples' consciousness, these factors begin to emerge as a vital vortex of force, receiving, distributing, and under order, that order being the directed, focused will of the many ashrams within the one ashram.
So what we see is that there's really one ashram, which is Sanat Kumara, and there are the subsidiary ashrams of Sanat Kumara, of which we will find ourselves in. Now we're coming to the end, and this is perhaps one of the most powerful statements that the Tibetan has made on the subjective life of our planetary logos. It's scientific, it's poetic, and it blends perfectly the fourth and fifth rays. And it's the final phase of the divine purpose that I'm going to let Rose share with us.
The final phase of the divine purpose. Does it mean anything to you when I say the ceremonial ritual of the daily life of Sanat Kumara, implemented by music and sound and carried on the waves of color which break upon the shores of the three worlds of human evolution, reveal in the clearest notes and tones and shades the deepest secret behind his purpose? It scarcely makes sense to you and is dismissed as a piece of symbolic writing used by me to convey the unconveyable. Yet I am not here writing in symbols, but am making an exact statement of fact.
Excellent. One short comment before we begin the video. This presentation is a mix of many rays, but perhaps most potently the fourth and fifth rays. The Tibetan has said that the fourth ray is basically out of manifestation and is just starting to cycle in at this time historically, and will reach its apex in 2025. And that this fourth ray will bring a fusion of the lower mind and the higher mind to the intuitive mind. And it will spawn a series and type of art of which we know very little of. So use this next animation as a meditation. Breathe evenly and deeply, and save the analysis for later, and just let it wash upon you, just as Sanat Kumara, with his bridge of light, is pouring down upon us right now. I want to thank.
So we will move into our meditation phase now, and then we'll have our questions and answers with any comments or questions for Duane. And we're going to do the full moon approach meditation that I'm sure many of us are very familiar with. And we know that the full moon of Libra is tomorrow, Thursday, October the 1st, at 2:05 p.m. Pacific time and 5:05 p.m. New York time. And we know that the keynote for Libra is, I choose the way which leads between the two great lines of force. And we can see with this whole presentation, this rainbow bridge is many lines of force. And the rainbow bridge as linking these, a very Liberian aspect to it. So this is the approach to the hierarchy. And the keynote of this approach to the hierarchy starts with a quote that the Tibetan gives us, where he says, "He who faces the light and stands within its radiance is blinded to the issues of the world of men. He passes on the lighted way to the great center of absorption. But he who feels the urge to pass that way, yet loves his brother on the darkened path, revolves upon the pedestal of light and turns the other way. He faces towards the dark, and then the 7 points of light within himself transmit the outward streaming light, and lo, the faces of those upon the darkened way receive that light. For them the way is not so dark. Behind the warriors, twixt the light and dark, blazes the light of hierarchy." So stage 1 is letting in the light, and we have group fusion. We affirm the fact of group fusion and integration within the heart center of the new group of world servants, meditating between the hierarchy and humanity. We are one with our group brothers, and all that we have is theirs. May the love which is in our soul pour forth to them. May the strength which is in us lift and aid them. May the thoughts which our soul creates reach and encourage them. We project a line of lighted energy towards the spiritual hierarchy of the planet, the planetary heart, the great ashram of Sanat Kumara. And towards the Christ at the heart of the hierarchy. We extend the line of light towards Shambhala, the center where the will of God is known. This strengthens the rainbow bridge between these 3 centers. Holding the contemplative mind open to the extra planetary energies of Libra, streaming into Shambhala and radiated through the hierarchy. Using the creative imagination, we endeavor to see the three planetary centers, Shambhala, hierarchy, and humanity, gradually coming into alignment and interplay. We reflect on the seed thought of Libra. I choose the way which leads between the two great lines of force. We visualize along a rainbow bridge the energies of light, love, and the will to good pouring throughout the planet and becoming anchored on Earth in prepared physical plane centers through which the divine plan can manifest. We see this energy pouring through Shambhala to the hierarchy, through the Christ, through the new group of world servers, to the men and women of goodwill, and to the physical centers of distribution. We refocus our consciousness as a group within the periphery of the great ashram of Sanat Kumara, the hierarchy. And we sound the affirmation, in the center of all love we stand. From that center, we the soul will outward move. From that center, we the ones who serve will work. May the love of the divine self be shed abroad in our hearts, through our group, and throughout the world. We visualize through these connected lines the downpouring spiritual inflow released from Shambhala through the hierarchy and the Christ and streaming into humanity through the prepared channels. We consider how these inpouring energies are establishing the pathway of light, or the rainbow bridge, for the coming world teacher, the Christ. Next, we will sound the great invocation. And as we do so, we visualize the outpouring of light and love and power from the spiritual hierarchy through the 5 planetary inlets or vortices of London, Darjeeling, New York, Geneva, Tokyo. And from those centers, we see it integrating to the entire etheric grid of the planet, irradiating the whole consciousness of the human race. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men. The purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center, which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. as we regather our attention to the objective world, we can go into any comments or questions.
Thank you, Rose. Thank you, Duane. We invite our participants now to share any questions, impressions from meditations and from the sharing, such invoking sharing that Duane and Rose offered to us. Please raise your hands and we will unmute you. You can also write your comments in the chat section of the control panel. Hello, John, you're unmuted.
Yes, thank you, Alexander. Thank you, Duane and Rose, for a great presentation. It was really informative and powerful. So during this, I had a realization, could this be considered, the Rainbow Bridge and the Tibetan Rainbow Body be considered the same, but the Tibetan Rainbow Body being more of an individualized method of achieving that Rainbow Bridge?
Excellent question. There are many different divisions of Tibetan Buddhism, and I don't pretend to understand many of them, but I have come to the conclusion that esoteric Buddhism is so powerful because it speaks to the rainbow body, the sheaths, the vestments, and all masters that have a little ashram or group that they work with bestow these gifts upon their students. And that's not to say that the students are not motivated individually and do the work themselves, but all these tonkas and magnificent frescoes of floating Buddhas and dakinis and all kinds of deities, they are far more esoteric than most people realize. They're actually a roadmap back to the source. And until you're trained and until you have developed these new forms of visualization, which may not be new at all to some of these more ancient religions, because the perennial philosophy is ever the same. So I think you're correct that these rainbow bodies are the seven rays, variations of the seven rays. And when you study them with the right interior concentration, they bring the same revelation. Thank you.
Thank you, that's very clear.
We have a question, Duane, in the comments. It is from Bruno. Duane, can you please relate the three lower stages with service, study, and meditation?
Absolutely. Those are the three outlines that we have been given by the Tibetan to go forward in our work. And too much of one or the other can create an imbalance, and each person for themselves has to decide what is best. And I do recall the Tibetan saying that of all three, meditation, study, intellectual study in service that the most esoteric is service. And the reason for that is because when you're serving, your eyes are taken off the little self of your personality and they are put on the greater needs of humanity or other people. And it can be a paradox where we need to know certain information, to know the right techniques, the right meditations, the right visualizations to use. But if we become overly concerned about our development, we can actually create a barrier against these higher levels of recognition. This is the paradox of the mind and why the Tibetan clearly distinguishes between the lower mind and the higher mind, and that the mind itself has 7 subplanes. It's not just the mind, the astral body, the physical, etheric. Each one of those has 7 levels, and each initiation edges you up 1 subplane. I hope that's of some value.
Thank you, Duane. There are several comments of appreciation of the presentations. Gabrielle wrote, "This was a very moving and beautiful presentation. I feel energized and uplifted. Thank you for your spirit and service."
Thank you.
Catherine wrote, "So dynamic and moving, thank you." Donna said, "Very inspiring, thank you." Huge thanks, Duane Rose, beautiful presentation. This is from Mindy.
It's been a real joy, and I send my blessings along with Rose to this group in this great period of testing. And the light is shining through, and the best is yet to come.
There is also a question from Kit. The image of different triangles looks very much like the Kabbalistic Tree of Life, Sephirot. Is there a connection?
There certainly is. When you go beneath the veil of conventional religion, you will find that there is a strong similarity between the tree of life and the chakra system. And even though I did not set out to create that, I, with some background in the Kabbalah and Jewish mysticism, said one day, wow, this is just like, not exactly, but very similar. And how else could it be? In other words, the deeper you penetrate, the more simple the teachings become, more powerful, more all-inclusive, but they become simple. And you'll find that all the historical dogmas, all the cultural trash that really dilutes the esoteric is not there. And so you see it as a tree of life with the roots below and the flowering above. Yes, excellent, Kit. Thank you.
Alina wrote, "Thank you, Duane and Rose. We are bringing your beautiful work into the Sierra Mountains as we drive to Lake Tahoe." Alina and Sheldon.
Thank you.
Anna wrote, "Thank you for pointing how much is going on in the empty space and that man is a hologram of totality."
Excellent. The word hologram is such a perfect analogy. Fractals and holograms, where you can take one small piece of a hologram and you can reproduce the parent. Because as DK would say, through the law of correspondence, the greater is reflected through the lesser. Through the law of analogy, there is a series of steps that are all connected if we can step out of the personality and fuse with it.
I have a question of my own. The technique of building Antakarana, the 6 stages of individual Antakarana, can it be applied to the group Antakarana? Is it the same process?
Yes, absolutely. There's one little footnote I should add to this, and it's a paradoxical footnote. DK in Ray's initiations and in many other places in his wonderful works outlines the importance of the Antakarana in building the Rainbow Bridge. But at the very end of many pages of technicalities, he says, but of course you know the Antakarana Bridge is just an illusion, created for the benefit of humanity who's caught in the lower mind. And if he integrates the lower mind correctly with the higher mind, all these teachings that humanity, the advanced of humanity is using, will be instrumental in taking them across the great shores of nirvana to the other side. And then they will realize that all this technicalities is just a temporary prelude to awakening the intuition. And all this minutia and all these endless theories and principles and laws are just a stepping stone to something so beautiful, so all-inclusive that it defies words.
Thank you. It's a beautiful footnote for this whole presentation. But I guess our lower mind needs those illusions as instruments to move forward.
Absolutely. Those who try to skip the lower mind do it at their own peril.
There are a couple more comments. Chandy says, wonderful, just what is needed at this time. Avon says, Duane, Rose, thank you for a timely and potent presentation. Duane, it's such a joy to see your dynamic images of truth. Again, since our USSR connection years ago.
Yes, I recall Avon clearly out of a class of maybe 30 or 40 people. She stood out amongst the rest because she, at that early age, was already penetrating into very deep levels and having certain sounds emanating. I remember Avon. I never forget the important things.
There's also a question from Rosita asking if this webinar been recorded. Yes, definitely it is recorded and it will be uploaded to our YouTube channel and on our website, 2025initiative.org. Maybe Daniela, you can put the link to our YouTube channel here in the chat. And thank you for all the technical work of our technical angel who uploads and prepares everything.
Yeah, it's not only technical, but just strictly angel. Thank you, Danielle. And
Thank you, Danielle.
yes, and it's Katya, and thank you, Duane and Rose and Duane. It's really.
Thank you, Sasha.
It's Katya. I'm at the same computer, so I'm using Alexandra's mic just to voice my appreciation. And that image with the blue color and with the light rose and light blue lines of energy. It's something absolutely, I don't know, like no words could describe, honestly.
Well, then you got it.
Yes. And yes, thank you.
Thank you.
So only a couple minutes left before we end our sharing in the circle. If anyone has any last comments, please raise your hands. We will unmute you. Catherine added in the chat, the dynamic torus with the peach and white light looked like Amrita for the planet. Gratitude to Duane, to Rose, and to all who joined us today in this group journey, in this group gathering on the Rainbow Bridge.
Thank you.
And Bruno asked if this presentation is regular. If to you're asking about the full moon presentations, yes, the 2025 initiative has the regular webinars at the full moons. But as for Duane and Rose presentations, this is the second time. We are privileged to have you here, and I hope it's not the last time. And maybe I can even take freedom to interpret Bruno's question as asking if might be this could become a regular presentation.
Oh, we'd be humbled. It's such a beautiful venue, and you have all created such a fantastic living organism. And without your tireless work, devotion, and persistence, and others in the team, we would not even be here.
Thank you, Duane. Maybe last question, are there any way that people could be in touch with you? And if you have any classes of your own that you could invite people to join you or anything of that?
I was giving some Zoom meetings on a monthly basis through the Moya School, but I had to discontinue them because of a lot of traveling. But Rose and I may activate them once again when we can get the right environment. And I'm glad that's such an important question.
There is a link to those webinars he did. He did about 12 of them, a year's worth, once a month. And they are, I believe, on the Moria Federation's YouTube page. And if anybody just is interested in that link, I don't have it, but email Duane at his email that I put in the chat box. And when we find the link, we'll send that to you. Or you can try to find them on your own by going to the Moria Federation's YouTube page and then doing a search for Awakening the Higher Mind and Intuition. That was the name of these series of presentations.
Thank you, Rose. And yes, the email is in chat, so please get in touch with Duane with request for that. And as Rose mentioned, the exact time of the full moon is tomorrow. So there are many different programs happening online, but I think the main thing is our subjective link as a group. It's an important opportunity for us all be subjectively connected at the exact time meditation at 5:05 Eastern time, which I believe is 9:05 GMT. And also on the screen, you see the schedule of our coming webinars of the 2025 initiative. As you see, there's a pretty full program. And besides that, we have daily vigil meditation at 8 p.m. GMT, which is like in 30 minutes. The purpose is focused group intention on the advancement of humanity in this time of high need. So we invite you to join that. And our next full moon webinar in Scorpio will be on October 29th. And our guest will be Michael Lindfeld. And together we will focus and meditate on the topic of recognition and management of accumulated debts, individual, group, and collective karma.
On that good note.
Thanks, everyone, and we'll continue now our journey together. Thank you, Duane and Rose. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.